TEDx Charleston gathers inspiring people with diverse ideas who share most of Charleston's untold stories of movers and shakers, thinkers, and teachers. Today, I talk with the leaders of TEDx Charleston for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. LB Adams and Mike Sottak, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Quintin.
You're very welcome. Mike, obviously you're the organizer of this year's TEDx Talks, and obviously LB Adams is the MC for that particular event. And I know that TEDx is an event that is basically a local gathering where live TED-like talks and performances are shared with the community by movers and shakers in this community. What's new, what's now with TEDx Charleston?
Well, if I could just say the first thing, this is our 8th one locally here. The TEDx concept is a global concept. There's over 3,000 of them held every year around the world, and they're meant to be exactly what you said, Quintin, local versions of the big TED Talks that people are familiar with, that feature very prominent people, heads of state, celebrities, people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk. What the TEDx concept is to localize that and showcase some of the great thinking and ideas happening here locally. So what's new is we're back. We were supposed to hold this event in 2020, yes, and we're put on the sidelines for 2 years, and just excited to be back and have a live event again in the Charleston community, and super excited that LB is going to be running the show for us from the stage, from the same stage that she actually spoke on 3 years ago. Can't believe it's been 3 years already.
I know. I can't either. I'm so excited about it.
Yes, ma'am. And who is LB? Who will be LB as obviously the master of ceremonies versus being obviously a speaker?
That's a good question. I think they're the same person. We haven't divided all the personalities yet. So, but I think the MC, it's my job to, first of all, make sure that the show flows and moves along. It's live theater, so we have to anticipate the wildly unexpected things and to just hopefully frame everyone in a really good light. And maybe a joke or two. I'm going to try not to curse. That's what I promise, yeah.
And we know you're so great with all your humor. We really, really love that as well. And I know the purpose of TEDx Charleston is to gather inspiring people with diverse ideas to share the many untold stories of Charleston's thinkers, visionaries, and fascinating teachers. What untold story that is has changed you all?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. But if we look at our lineup this year, and it's pretty much the same lineup as we had scheduled for 2 years ago. And we draw speakers from health and science to social justice issues to environmental issues. Right. So it's a great lineup. I encourage everybody to take a look at our website, TEDxCharleston.org, to see all the speakers. But, after being on a 2-year hiatus, we had to adjust it a little bit because a couple of our speakers weren't able to come back and do it this year. And we wanted to respond to some more current things that are going on in the world. Specifically COVID, which wasn't on the agenda 2.5 years ago when we put it
until it took over the agenda.
So we've got our top first speaker is actually going to talk about some of the myths and realities of pandemics and diseases in general, but COVID specifically. She's worked with TEDx and she's going to be great. So I think we wanted to address the elephant in the room right away, if you will. With our first speaker, and then LB, maybe you want to talk about a couple of the other highlights that are really inspiring to you.
Yeah, for me, it's really interesting. We have 2 people that are really talking about the justice system. And one person was incarcerated and one person was a parole officer. And so to hear them, in the same space talking about very different perspectives of the same thing was really eye-opening for me. Very interesting, very profound.
Yeah. And I think one of the other highlights for me, and he's a new speaker, he wasn't on the original lineup for 2020, is Chris Singleton. And if you don't know his story, it's a story worth hearing. His mother was one of the victims in the Emanuel 9 shooting several years ago. And he just talks about how he's reconciled that in his mind and how it's really changed his outlook on people's belief systems and, you know, what they stand for. And I, you know, it's really an eye-opening presentation, really inspiring, coming from a person that lived through the circumstances that he did.
And again, you know, his story is part of our collective. Right. And so it really resonates.
Absolutely. Right. Which one of those speakers actually personally inspires you all?
Well, I one of them is Chris's, you know, that story, and I don't want to give away anything, you know. I want you to be as profoundly impacted by his talk, but certainly his perspective and what he's learned, you know, from what happened to his mom and his view on guns and storytelling is really interesting and has shifted my perspective a little bit.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know, Chris wrote a children's book recently about obviously what happened at Mother Emanuel, and I've had him on Quintin's close-ups twice. But how has TEDx Charleston inspired people to share their diverse ideas?
You know, we get over, well, I think going back to 2019 when we opened up the application process, and people have to apply to speak, and it goes through a pretty rigorous vetting process. I think we had over 200 initial applicants. So I think people see, you know, TED in general, the brand, but TEDx Charleston has really emerged as a platform for people to share their ideas. And it's, you know, it's very competitive. So the people that we've chosen, 14 speakers and 4 performers, we interlude some of the speakers with some entertainment, which we can talk to you about. But, you know, they're the cream of the crop. They've really, and we, you know, specifically try to assemble a diverse set of topics and people and experiences. So it's not all about, you know, social justice or environment or anything like that. It's really a good mix, I think. So to answer your question, I think people just aspire for that TEDx and that TED experience, which then goes beyond the stage. Yeah, I know LB can speak from personal experience. And very literally, once you are accepted and speak at a TEDx event like this, then your video becomes uploaded into the TED YouTube channel, and ultimately has a chance to become, you know, globally viral, literally, and also you potentially have a chance to appear at a big TED event, which are the, you know, the monster events they hold a couple times a year.
And this might be a silly question, but how do you separate TED from the TEDx experiences?
Yeah, I've never been to a TED. I don't know about you, LB, but the TED is, you know, kind of, we call it the mothership or the big TED. It's a massive event. It's it costs several $1,000s to attend, and it is literally world-class speakers. You know, I mean, they handpick the best of the best, and so it's just a different level event, and I think it addresses more global issues, I would say, you know, is the short answer. Whereas TEDx is meant to have a local connection. So all of our speakers are from the community, have some sort of connection to the community, and are addressing an issue that has, you know, that will resonate with Charlestonians and people in the Low Country.
Right. Not that there's not necessarily a larger view to many of the talks, but also many of them are very connected to, you know, Charleston and the citizens of Charleston. So, yeah, I think that's the major difference.
And it's a chance to showcase some of the great ideas that come out of Charleston that could have an impact globally. Yeah. You know, we have a couple of doctors presenting some very advanced scientific achievements and innovations. Again, the social justice issues, those are pretty global in this day and age. So talking about, you know, how what's going on here ripples out to society in general.
Right. And what diverse ideas from TEDx Charleston have transformed Charleston in the past 3 years?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I mean, LB, you've heard them all last time, so maybe you could talk about some of the highlights that you saw from 2019 even.
So I'm sorry, Quintin, is the question, how has the previous one transformed Charleston now? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Oh, no worries. What diverse ideas from TEDx Charleston over the past couple of years have actually transformed Charleston?
Okay, so that's a good question. I want to say one of my favorite talks from 2019 was Stephanie Boy, who was known as Porn Mom, right? And so her talk, I think, scared people, but it was also really revelatory. And I think now I know that she's teaching a sexual citizenship class at College of Charleston. I think before her talk, that might never have happened. So she's really opened up doorways, to talk about sex, sexuality, pornography, and the effects of all of that on our youngest citizens. So there you go. I mean, there's one great example right there.
Yeah, and we had, in the past, we've had Steve Palmer, who I'm assuming was probably a guest of yours at one point, Quintin. He's obviously very successful local restaurant businessman. And he talked about, addiction, alcohol and drug addiction, specifically in the food and beverage industry. And has gone on to do great things with his... Ben's Friends is the name of his organization, and I think that really took root during the time he spoke at TEDx a couple of years ago.
And I'm just sitting a couple of blocks away from Oak Steakhouse, by the way, and it's lunchtime. So
Yeah, he's got the new one on Broad Street too, right? One Broad is.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I know that you all provide a setting where new connections, partnerships, and opportunities can be forged, where obviously you honor the past while bringing forth something new for consideration and action. What new connections, partnerships, and opportunities do you want to bring forth for consideration and action right now?
Great question. I mean, I'll take a first shot at it, LB, and you can pile on. But, like we like to say, it's not just the 14 or 18 people you're going to see on stage. That's the TEDx experience. It's every single person in the room. Close to 1,000 people at the music hall. We see them as ambassadors for what's being talked about, and it should be a participatory conversation and one that continues after the afternoon of March 23rd. So I think the connections that people make are within the audience themselves. We facilitate discussions afterwards at an after party at the Charleston Museum, where the participants, the speakers, can mix with the people in the audience. So, it's kind of an organic experience that we've seen happen, where people just, the spark is lit from a specific talk, and then it just takes off from there.
I want to piggyback on that and say, the day before the actual show, we do an open event for high school students. And for me, in 2019, that was one of the most profound experiences, talking to these young people who were exposed to these ideas and concepts that they might not have. And I know that it affected them in a lot of different ways. But the fact that these young people get to carry these ideas outside the doors too, I think is really transformative for our entire community.
It's a great point. It's a great point on that. It's actually our dress rehearsal, we call it, but we allow high school students to come in for free, and they see the actual show as it's going to be performed the next day. But as you said, LB, they see things through a completely different lens than the next day audience, which tends to be obviously young adults and older.
Right.
And it's a much more intimate setting. There's fewer of them, and I think the interaction and the direct impact you can see as a speaker, as LB talked about, is actually more profound than perhaps in the big, when all the lights and glamour of the main event on the next day.
The glamour.
A lot of work that comes into that. But let me go back to 2019, LB. What are those ideas that you took away from that particular event?
Well, like I said, Porn Mom was really impactful. And then, of course, his name just went right out of my head. But one of my other favorite talks was, he's a Post and Courier reporter.
Tony Bartleby.
Tony, thank you. His talk, like, I watched it on loop because I just loved the way he delivered it. I loved the information. I've been thinking about it ever since. So that one is absolutely one of my favorites. Thank you. I'm sorry, Tony.
We love Tony. He's one of the best here.
Yeah.
What was that setting for connections and partnerships and opportunities before TEDx Charleston?
Say that again, please.
Yeah, what was the setting for connections and partnerships and opportunities in Charleston before TEDx Charleston?
Yeah, I mean, I believe Charleston's a great event town, obviously, and a great networking town. And I think, TEDx kind of takes it to a different level just because of the perception and the brand awareness for the event itself on a global level.
For sure.
So I think we bring a different level of, I won't say authenticity, but it's a different type of event. It's a global event that then we respin into a very local event. So, which is kind of unusual. Like most of the other events kind of start local, and they may talk about
larger. Yeah.
But I think we start global and then
global. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, LB.
I was just saying that the TED brand is global and ubiquitous. Most people know who TED is.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I get an email every day. I signed up for TEDx, TED Daily, and it's the talk of the day, right? So that they draw on this global library of inspiring talks, and some of them are funny, some of them are serious, some of them are sad. They're all different lengths. I just watched one that was 50 minutes. It was an interview with an expert on Ukraine, right? So they're timely as well. So we hope our speakers can get into that channel, and it's a great showcase for the talent and the innovation and the thought leadership that's going on here in Charleston that then permeates out to the world through that TED channel.
Okay, what is that thought leadership here in Charleston right now?
Oh man, like I said, we've got some really interesting speakers on some really poignant topics, whether it's race relations. We've got Raven Saunders. I'm sure you know her. She's obviously most famous as an Olympic athlete that came out of Burke High School right here in Charleston. But her backstory is fascinating, right? Having dealt with mental health issues, all sorts of gender identity type of issues that she's very open about talking about. And I think, we're just giving her a stage to talk about that in a way that she might not have had otherwise.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that the speakers have learned from the beginning is that not only are you just going to give a talk, but you also have to be vulnerable. And I know as a former speaker, that was a little bit of a revelation to me. I'm a seasoned speaker, but to know that when you go on the red dot, you also have to be vulnerable and open and share your story. That's something completely different. And without exception, all of these speakers have absolutely given a little bit of themselves for this event.
Yeah, and I just like to say that the commitment and the investment that the speakers make is incredible, Quintin. I mean, these guys they're coached. We have a professional coaching team of 10 people that work literally for the last 3 months. It's a boot camp. LB can talk to it. These guys have to show up at individual coaching sessions, group coaching sessions, and they all do it, and they all understand that that's the commitment they have to make to be an effective TED talker, which is it's a little bit different variety than just your average talk, I think, and there's certain parameters and requirements for a TED talk to be successful.
LB, how were you an effective TED Talk speaker in 2019?
How was I effective? Well, I knew, through the coaching, as again, I'm a seasoned speaker, and I accepted the coaching because you don't know what you don't know. And the red dot, it could be a little scary, right? And so as Mike said, the parameters required for a TED Talk are different than, any other keynote. So that was one thing. And I availed myself of the coaching, and I became very friendly with my coach. And that vulnerability was something that I had to work on, but also just having fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a fun experience to go out and to stand on the red dot, and they want to hear what you have to say, and to really understand that. Like, you're talking to people who really want to hear you is what a gift. What a gift it is, really.
And LB's being a bit humble. I mean, I've seen LB's talk, and I've seen her now through this process for preparing to be host. She's real, and I think the connection to the audience is real. And people can sense when you're giving a canned speech, or you've over practiced almost. I think just being your real self, which is being vulnerable, as
there
she's
you go.
talking about.
Exactly. Now you may get some cheese, but it won't be canned.
Let me ask you all this: how do you honor the past with new connections, partnerships, and obviously relationships here in Charleston?
For me personally, this is my first year being the organizer, and I've had a chance to interact with kind of every aspect of the event, from the speakers to the coaches to the people that worked on the selection team and to the volunteers that make the event happen. So for me, just the camaraderie and the teamwork to put on it like this, all volunteers, right? No one gets paid for doing this. And it's a premium class event. That's been inspiring to me. I've made a lot of new friends and connections just from that experience alone. So I chalk that up to a great experience.
I think there's the pursuit of, we're all very aware of what TED means. And so we're all very much pursuing this excellence, this idea of excellence, and always trying to be better.
Yes.
And I think that's how we honor what came before.
What does TED Talk mean to you?
To me personally, and again, I think here's where we might draw the difference between a TED Talk on a global stage and a TEDx Talk. So TEDx Talk to me, TEDx Charleston Talk to me is, presenting the best and brightest of Charleston and the Low Country. We have so many great people here, so many great thinkers, so many great things that, and I know, Quintin, you're on top of it because you've got an agenda to fill almost every day. So you're as plugged into it as anybody. But for the average person, this is just, a very visual experience that they can come. And we've had people come in. I bet there's people that's been coming every year for the last 8 years.
Right.
A loyal following that just like the concept, like the fact that I can hear from local people talking about ideas that either impact me or resonate with me directly, or that I can be proud that I'm from the same community that these are emanating from.
Agreed. And this year, because we were canceled in 2020 and we did virtual couple of things in 2021. We're back together now, live and in person, more than the box, So, that's also, I think, really exciting this year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. As much as we love your show, Quintin, I think people love getting out, anxious to get out from beyond the PC.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what more is in this box?
This 2022 box?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's just more greatness, more TED greatness, right? I think, as LB said, we've established a tradition and kind of a legacy of excellence. And to be honest with you, TEDx Charleston is considered one of the best run and higher quality TEDx events around the world. We continue to get great reviews and positive feedback, and we're well known by Big TED. So I think it's, we have a standard to uphold, and I feel proud that we're going to do it again. I feel proud that people have, overcome the challenge of being on the sidelines for 2 years and really having to think and rethink and rethink again what they're going to talk about.
And we get to come together as a community.
Yeah. Yes, and as the community is coming back together, and everybody, we were virtually sold out two years ago, and most people said, "I'm going to hold on to my ticket. I don't want a refund. I want to be there when you come back." So it's a great feeling.
How amazing!
Yes, absolutely. And how have you all actually been able to rethink in the midst of COVID?
Yeah, I put some of that onto the coaches in terms of the speakers, because we had the lineup pretty much assembled 2 years ago. And as I said earlier, we had to make some adjustments because of people's personal circumstances, weren't even going to be in the area or left the area. But that was the minority. And we were able to fill those gaps with some of the people we've talked about earlier. Jane Kelly, who's doing the COVID talk, Raven, Chris are new to the lineup. But for the existing set of speakers, which are the majority, I remember seeing some of their talks 2 years ago when we were getting ready, and I won't say changed completely, but they've done, for the ones that needed to, have done a great job of adjusting.
Yeah. I think the common denominator is hard damn work.
Yes.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
I agree. And when it comes to the issues locally and globally, what are those gaps that TEDx should be filling next?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
There's so many, right? I think, the T in TED stands for technology, and I'm in the technology business, so I'd like to see a more input from the tech community that's growing so quickly here and doing some great things.
Yeah.
I think anything to do with the environment. We have a talk about flooding and the issue of flooding, but it's more than just about flooding.
So good.
And just, I was thinking about it today, how much has changed in the 2 years since we put the original program together, and things that weren't even on people's minds back then, COVID being one of them, but obviously that's changed. But, if you look at events that have transpired in the past 2 years, or trends, the whole BLM issue is way much more significant than it was in 2019, George Floyd and that. I think, what happened on January 6th, the whole divisiveness from a political standpoint, we're not supposed to talk about politics at TED, but it's the societal and effects of what's happened over the last 2 years.
We can't ignore the atmosphere.
Yeah. I think things like the manifestation of our realization of things like of slavery through the opening of the African American Museum, which I know is not all about slavery, but some more historical aspects of what's happened and how Charleston has changed, not just over the last 2 years, but over the last 200 years. I think those are topics still worth talking about.
Agreed.
Yes, ma'am. Agreed. And what? You all are not supposed to be political at TEDx Talk, but what are those areas that you want to dive into next?
Yeah, for me personally, I would, like I said, technology, and that's not a necessarily controversial, although there are some controversial aspects of technology. This whole new currency trend and blockchain and things like that, and NFTs, right? We have I don't know if you've ever interviewed, whose name escapes me now, that the gentleman who would set some sort of record for selling an NFT, a piece of art, Bobble, I think his name is. But that's a whole other kind of angle we could go down. But and I'm a student of history too, and I would like to see more historical perspective and how it's affecting our lives today.
I was going to say, actually, I would love to hear someone plainly speak about how we talk about history.
Yeah.
I would love that conversation, particularly in light of, critical race theory and the 1619 Project. I would love to hear her talk about that.
And it hits home here, right? There was protests in the streets. We're knocking down statues. So, it's hits home. And like I said, a lot of it has happened over the last 2 years since we last put on a TED event. So I think there's plenty of material to work from here in the community, and plenty of great speakers and thinkers here that we need to tap into.
Agreed.
And what do you want people to take home from TEDx Charleston 2022?
Ideas worth spreading. I want them to take home conversations. I want them to walk out the door and have to talk to someone about this idea that they agree with or that they wildly disagree with. That's what I want. I want conversations.
Yeah, I agree. And overriding that is the enthusiasm that we're back, right? We're back after 2 years, and we want to be back and be a big part of the community conversation. We want to give people this platform and this conduit to have those conversations. So, we're all, as you could tell, very excited and proud of TED and TEDx and everything associated with it. So we just want to maintain that legacy of excellence and conversation.
Yes, indeed. Well, they're telling me I'm running out of time here on Zoom, and you just froze on me, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
We've got your voice, but your face.
My back? Oh my God, I'm having all sorts of tech issues. I'm supposed to be a tech
He's
guy.
really good at not moving.
Sorry.
Mike Sottak and, of course, the legendary LB Adams. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thanks, Quintin. We'll see everybody on March 23rd.
There you go.
All right, friends.